Once again, good morning. Certainly want to welcome everyone. I just want to say, if you are visiting with us, there's a little bit of a change this morning. We have Brother Gary Workman with us. So you're not going to hear a sermon. Instead, you're going to hear a presentation about the work that he and his wife Nadya have endeavored to complete in the Ukraine, and we're going to learn a lot about that. Unless you've had your head in the sand, you know that it has been an absolutely atrocious and horrific circumstance that has befallen the Ukrainian people. And his lovely wife Nadya, being Ukrainian herself, and Gary's been in the Ukraine long enough, he might as well be Ukrainian. I can only imagine the personal pain that they feel. Gary, he has preached for 63 years and taught at 5 schools of preaching, to include Preston Road, which if you're from this area, you'll remember at least, as well as the Brown Trail School of Preaching. He worked as a missionary for 29 years to the former Soviet Union. And I asked him, I said, well, what about your wife? And he said, well, just say she's Ukrainian and I'll talk plenty about her. So that's absolutely fine. And really are thankful to have them. And I invite you to give your greatest attention to this, and so that we might be able to share in the concerns of our brothers and sisters. And Gary will be available to speak with afterwards, so that you might talk with him on how you might personally be able to support this work. Brother Gary?
I'm going to get that out of my way a little bit. Thank you, Mike, for those wonderful words of introduction. And in case it wasn't clear enough, my wife Nadya, sitting up here with Linda, is Ukrainian. Ukrainian was the first language she ever spoke. That's what they spoke at home. And then when she went to school, the Russian language was introduced. But there's basically very little difference between Russian and Ukrainian. So whichever language you would like to speak with Nadya after worship is over, you just go right ahead and pick either one of those. She can jump back and forth between them without batting an eye. And it's really, like I said, very close and similar languages. Nadya is wearing, if you see her up close and look at her straight on, you'll see she's wearing the colors of the Ukrainian flag. And so she's been doing that a lot lately, ever since this Russian invasion began. And that's going to be heavily in what I want to tell you this morning as we get along here. But I want to present to you what our basic work is over in Ukraine. And we'll see if we can make these pictures flip through like they're supposed to. Folks, I've got a lot of pictures here that are going to show up, so I'm not going to be able to linger too long on any one like I'm doing right now at this moment. But that's us standing in front of the Poltava, Ukraine train station. And there it is back in the background. Poltava, Ukraine is on the east side. I don't know, I'll show you some maps in just a moment. But we're working in Ukraine and Belarus. We don't personally go into Belarus. Now, Nadya could do it and have no difficulty whatsoever. But if they discovered me working in Belarus, I would be exported right away, deported. There's a map of Western Europe and some of Russia, the big purple part, and with Ukraine, to zoom in on Ukraine, here it is in gold on this map. That's the Black Sea right there. If you would get into the southernmost part of that, here's all of its regions, by the way. If you would get into the southernmost part of that part that's sticking down into the Black Sea, and get on a boat and go straight south, you would be almost exactly in the place on the northern shore of Turkey where came from, Priscilla and Aquila. That was his hometown. So, and the Ukrainian people back then were the Scythian people. Remember Colossians 3:11, Paul mentioned the Scythians. You ask a Ukrainian today, who were your people originally? And they will say, we were the Scithi. That's how they pronounce that word. Coronavirus took a big hit over there, bigger than it did here, because people were far less vaccinated there, and we lost our beloved preacher, Andrei, in this picture. He was probably our finest Ukrainian preacher, native-born Ukrainian. Went through preacher training school there, the extension of Bear Valley School, and then became a teacher in that school, and now his wife, pictured here, is a widow, and we're just grieving right along with her. He died only last September, and she's still not over that, as you can imagine. Poltava is the city I mentioned, and I'm going to show you more maps of where you will zoom in on that, but there's our church building in Poltava. It was a restaurant. I used to drive past this a lot over years and years thinking, oh, if we could only have that building as ours. And sure enough, in the providence of God, it came up for sale, and brothers and sisters in Christ here in this country helped us buy that. And so we got this wonderful building with this great walk-up appeal. We talk about drive-up appeal here. Well, they have drive-up appeal over there too, but there's a lot of pedestrian traffic in Ukraine. If you were to post somebody out here to watch and see how many people walk past your building while we're in this worship period, you might not see one person. If we did that right there in Ukraine, you might see hundreds of people walk past in that same period of time. So a lot of pedestrian traffic, and people can just come right in very easily. And there's our sign over the front door, says Church of Christ. There's what the whole property looks like, a view from the back, and you can see it's right on a main boulevard. And it's about like where you're situated right here. And so I do a lot of preaching in that building. I preach in the Russian language, and I also lead singing in the Russian language. And the songs we sing are basically the old familiar songs that you know that are right here in your own book. We just sing them in Russian or Ukrainian, depending on the preference of the song leader, and people can typically speak either language. That's the inside of it. This wonderful facility just turned out to be such a great blessing. We only got this 4 years ago in 2018. And so we hope that Russia is not going to take it away from us in this invasion of the country that's going on right now. But our members are so appreciative of that. This dear lady went to be with the Lord last year. She was one of our oldest members there, and such a kind soul. And knowing her more than 25 years, I never heard her one time say any negative thing about anybody or anything. That was how sweet she was, and we lost her to our loss and her gain. Belarus is up north of Ukraine. It's that dot on the map. If you can see that dot, we'll zoom in a little more. It's the green one here. That's Ukraine below it, and Russia borders both countries. So here it is, also green. Ukraine's yellow, and that's Russia on the right and upper part of Ukraine there. So we have 6 regions in Belarus, much smaller country. There are 24 in Ukraine, and our work is right there where that arrow is pointing, in the town of Gorky, that is 10 miles from the Russian border. We have this couple, Igor and Katya. Katya would be Kathy to us. And by the way, my name Gary and the name Igor are related. They both are Scandinavian origin if you go back far enough. And it's just different ways of saying the same name. So we found this building that came up for sale. We helped get the funds. Well, we got all the funds for it, and from brothers and sisters here in America, and sent it over there to be a combination preacher's home and church meeting place. And so this is where Igor and Katya are working, and their church is able to gather. These were new converts. We just baptized them in November of 2016, and In January of 2017, Igor sent me a message and said, I'm ready to become a preacher and start the church here in Gorky, 2 months after conversion. And so there we go. The congregation started up. We have never yet personally gone to the site. And because we need them to do that work there, we literally cannot do it, but we bring them into Ukraine and we have time together with them, mentoring time and loading them up with Bibles and all that sort of thing. These are Bibles they're holding there and passing out all this literature, and that's their growing family. The reason I can't go in there is because of this man, the president, Lukashenko. If he found out an American is doing mission work in that country, like I said earlier, deportation automatically. So he's buddies with President Putin of Russia, and they just really frown on any Americans trying to upset their religious stability of having the Russian Orthodox Church. That's the only one they will tolerate. We also work in the city of Kamyansk, that's how you say that, left bank. The big Dnieper River of Russia flows right down through it. I'm going to show you maps more later when you'll see that. You'll see that river, and we'll zoom in on it kind of. Anyway, left bank, right bank. You distinguish the two by facing downriver always. And then whatever's on your left, that's left bank. So here we are, left bank. We own that building. Got it a number of years ago. It's 8,000 square feet. We were able to buy it for $16,000. I think we got a bargain. And our preacher standing up the front, his name is, we would say Vladimir here, it's Vladimir. We call him Volodya, the familiar form of the name. And there he is with his wife, Maria, whom we call Masha. And this couple has been doing great work for many years. We supported them to work in another city called Belarus. And I told them, I said, there's one couple in that city who are Christians. If you go there, that makes 4. You can start the church and I'll support you. And he said, okay, and that church is still in existence today. This younger man, Sergei is his name, Sergei Ponomarenko, and he is working with Volodya in this congregation. And here's some views of the members and Bible studies and tea time. Like we have a church potluck here, we have tea time every time in Ukraine, because we want to give plenty of opportunity for people to interact with each other. All these Bible studies, and some of the members here, this dear lady on the left, she's been a faithful member for about 28 years, and now she's in the first stages of Alzheimer's, and we're sad about that. This one, known her for more than 20 years. We get a message from her almost every single day, it seems like. Just a wonderful, sweet person. This one here, her name is Lydia. Her sister Maria was, I think, the first Christian woman I ever met in Ukraine. That was in the summer of 1993. And these two were sisters. Both were Christians, evangelized by Americans. And their mother became a Christian, Yekaterina, that's Catherine to us, living out in a village. I preached in her home. Their kids became Christians, and their grandkids became Christians, and now they have great-grandkids, 5 generations of Christians in one family. And that is a real treasure to us. We have this young man on the right bank of Kamyansk. I kind of flipped past that fast, right bank, the other side of the river. His name is Ilya, that's Elijah to us, his wife Zina, working with him. They have 2 kids, Ilya and Zina, doing great work on the right bank of Kamyansk, working with this young man. They both look somewhat similar, but this one was a Muslim. And the youth of that congregation were so active and evangelistic, they converted this Muslim boy when he was 15 years old, and at the great objection of his parents, he was baptized into Christ. 2 years after that, he said to me, I want to be a preacher. And that's what he is today. We sent him off to Bible school. He went to the Bear Valley Extension in Ukraine, got his training there, and here he is doing some lessons and that sort of thing. And so these 2 fellows working together. His name is El June, by the way. it's a kind of foreign sounding name. He's Kazakh or Azerbaijanian rather, by ethnicity. And Azerbaijanian, they're basically Turkish in their ancestry. So from Azerbaijan, Belarusian, Ukraine, and he working with Ilya, these two fellows working together. Along with this song leader, Pavel, that's Paul to us, we call him Pasha for short. And this young man, great song leader. By the way, we're right now coming up pretty soon on 11 o'clock. My eyes are having trouble focusing from that far away, but I think about 10 minutes from now. That means in 10 minutes, worship, online worship is going to begin. When I'm not preaching on a Sunday morning here, I'm conducting that online worship at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, 7 p.m. in Russia or Ukraine. Well, in Russia, it's actually an hour later. We have some most of the people who connect with us are in Ukraine. We typically have one or more in Russia. We have several in Belarus. We sometimes have some in Italy, and we always have some in the USA. And typically 6 countries live worship every Sunday, starting 10 minutes from now, and he will be the song leader for that session, as he typically is. Got a great ear for music, and so we appreciate him so much. This congregation has a lot of activities. That's me at the lead end of the table there. I'm giving a Bible lesson to a group of basically young people. They work a lot with kids and young people in this congregation, and just many, many activities. Folks, it's not meeting 3 times a week over there. It's meeting 5 or 6 times a week, maybe 7 times a week over there. Here's Bible camp. Takes place every summer. Typically 3 camps back to back, 2 weeks each. 6 weeks of Bible camp. Converts every single time. And that's the result of really energetic working for the Lord, what you're seeing in these pictures right here. That's the result of it. And then Bible study under the overhang there, or in a tent, or wherever it might be. And so it goes on and on. There's a young man standing there with El June under a tent at the Bible camp, and we have these baptisms that we typically do in the river. There's a big dam there, and so the river, it's kind of like over here Lake Ray Hubbard on the other side of Dallas, which is 3 miles wide. This lake is 5 miles wide because of the dam, and very convenient place to baptize people, because there's one spot where it's a shallow beach that goes out, sandy beach, and we baptize them day and night, as you can see in this picture. Zaporozhye is how you pronounce this in Russian, or Zaporizhia in Ukrainian, and this is the city you may have heard in the news that took a hit on their nuclear reactor in this recent invasion. This is where it is. We've had this congregation since the year 2000. We started it with 1 preacher and 1 woman who was already converted that moved down there after we converted her and baptized her in the last place I just showed you. And now, today, these are pandemic shots. I mean, the congregation was like twice this big before the pandemic hit. All those chairs were filled up. And so what I'm showing you here is pandemic attendance. They rent this auditorium, and that's done 2 hours every Sunday. And then on weekdays, Wednesday typically, there's the congregation, they meet in quarters like this, kind of a long shotgun room there, and that's them meeting for a midweek Bible study. Their preacher, Yuri, like the name of the first Russian cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin. This is Yuri Taran. We found him years ago as a recovering drug addict in a hospital in another city, and we converted him, and then he wanted to become a preacher, and he got his training, and he's been working with this congregation now for about 16, 17 years, and doing a great job, along with Yulia here, his wife. That would be Julia to us. And he just recovered from COVID and got back in after only a 3-week absence, and here he is getting a picture made of him with young people saying, "I'm so glad to be back with him. I got over that COVID pretty quick." And so they have a lot of work going on here. Well, this is one of our works in Ukraine. And look how many people are involved in that and how excited they are to be Christians. This young man giving a Bible lesson. 2 of them got married here not too long ago. And then a lot of work with kids, orphanages. They go into orphanages all the time. And that little girl, I think, was in a hospital. I think she had leukemia, see, no hair. And so working a lot with people like this and people who were fleeing from the hostility zones in the east. The hostility has been going on for 8 years now, and that's who these people are right here. You see that housing on the left and right there? That's what the city put up to take care of those people. And here again, all this is temporary housing in this shot, and we go to where they are. We don't wait for them to come and find the church, which they might not even know about. We go find them. We hold Bible studies right there where they're living. And that's what's going on here at this table. And then sitting down with people on a park bench and telling them about the Lord. That was the preacher's wife there in the black talking to this woman. I've been in a Ukrainian prison. That's what this is, folks. Not as a convict, you understand. But I've been in there giving Bible lessons. I want to tell you from what I saw, you don't want to live there. So, anyway, we go in there, we give them Bibles. It says Biblia in Russian language on the front of that Bible. That's a different alphabet. Call it the Cyrillic alphabet. That's what's used for Russian or Ukrainian. It was invented by a monk named Cyril, who started the Orthodox Church in Russia way back when. So, people in this city are receiving instruction from the Word of the Lord. Lots of street evangelism like here. We do this all the time over there. Now, it wouldn't work right here. You go out and put a coffee table or a card table up out there somewhere with literature on it, and maybe not a single person will walk by. We do this in Ukraine, and lots of people walk by. So they stop, like this woman. They get this literature. They set up Bible studies because the preacher himself, along with others, is working these tables, and they get names and they get phone numbers, and they continue to work with these people. And it goes on and on like that and leads to the river. We like to sing, "Shall We Gather at the River?" We sing it a lot over there in Ukraine. Of course, the song is really about ending your life and crossing the river of death and going on into the next life, but it seems so appropriate because we gather at the river for baptisms, and we do a lot of them in natural water like this. And all these baptisms I'm showing you right here took place last year during the pandemic time. Nothing goes back further back than last summer right here. Lots of converts being made in Ukraine. Here's another work we have going. It's the city of Liman. And there's the train station. It used to be called Krasny Liman, Red Liman. Red was the adopted color of the Bolshevik Revolution, you remember. So the Russians were Reds. And anyway, in recent years, they started purging all names of cities, streets, and whatever else that were communistically related. They didn't want any more identification with communism. Folks, you can't find a communist over there if you search for a week. And those of you who are anywhere near my age, can you imagine how surprised you would have been 50, 60 years ago if somebody were to have told you the day is going to come in your lifetime when you won't even be able to find a communist in Russia? You wouldn't have believed them. And that's what has happened. In the providence of God, I would say. We have this congregation going on, and if you look carefully, there's an older man in the shot, and he is our preacher. There he is, right sitting in front, sort of on the right-hand side, and he is the preacher there. His name is Alexander. Here he is, right in the middle. He went through preacher training school in his mid-70s. Again, the Bear Valley School in Ukraine, got his training, and he's doing a great job in Liman. He's out there with street evangelism, got his table up all the time, summer, winter, rainy, or nice weather, snowy, it doesn't matter. He's out there trying to sow the seed of the kingdom. And here he is taking a selfie with members of the church behind him. He came to us in Poltava, And we're seeing him here, seeing him off in the train station, and I snapped this picture of him and me. He's just a bit younger than I am. I know I look a lot younger than he does, but anyway, that's because I lived in America most of my life. He lived over there. Life's harder over there. They look older for their age, like typically 10 to 20 years older they look over there, especially women, because they're out in the sun a lot in their life, having to dig in the field and the orchard and all of that. Next shot, 19-year-old Nazar in Kramatorsk. Now this 19-year-old is the grandson of the man I just showed you. Both of them are preachers, and the one in the middle, this boy's father, is also a gospel preacher. We have 3 generations of preachers in one family. And so he's the latest one that we have taken on. We took him on last summer after he graduated from preacher training school. He's doing a great job. Their meeting is starting right now at 7 p.m. Ukrainian time, and Nazar has the sermon today. And so in a few minutes from now, 15, 20 minutes from now, he'll be starting his sermon. Just a real sharp young guy. By the way, he speaks fluent English already at the age of 19. And I don't even have to bother writing to him in Russian. Daily prayer meetings we have going on at this same time since the Russian invasion began. We meet at 11 a.m. our time here every single day, and the same time on Sunday for the weekly worship. And like I mentioned, Christians in 6 different countries. Here are some that we have reclaimed. You know, Mike, when this pandemic hit, all of us who preach the gospel and elders and other concerned people, we wondered, well, how's this going to affect our church attendance? You know, there's sometimes a blessing in disguise, as my mother liked to say. She was from Oklahoma. And the blessing in disguise here is that we thought of things to do that we might not have thought of, or at least not as quickly, that we can do online and streaming worship and YouTube and all of that. And so we started doing this live worship, and we reclaimed all 3 of these people right here who were still in Ukraine. Now, 2 of them, the 2 on the left, are now in the USA because their daughter came here and married an American boy, actually, just when she was on a student visit here. And that daughter, by the way, I met her when she was 10 years old, and she was the one who was primarily responsible for getting a congregation of the Lord started in Ukraine. When an American missionary called her mother in this shot right here and said, her aunt called her and said, I'm sending a missionary down there. He's going to preach the gospel to you. Can you give him lodging and invite some people to hear him? He's going to tell you about the gospel of Christ. She said, yes. She said, now let me talk to Dasha, the daughter. Not 9 years old at the time. Dasha got on the phone with great Aunt Maria and Maria said, I'm sending a preacher down there. He's going to tell you about the gospel. He's going to live in your apartment. Can you go find other people to come in there and listen to what he has to say? Dasha said, okay. She got off the phone, went out, started going up and down the elevator to all the floors in their high-rise apartment building, ringing doorbells. And somebody would come to the door, she would say, do you believe in God? And if that person said yes, she said, then you will want to hear what a preacher is going to say, who's going to come to us in a few days, and we're inviting you to come to our apartment down below. And that's how the church got started in Dnipro-Dzerzhinsk, Ukraine. First time I tried to say that name, it came out something like Nebuchadnezzar. But anyway, that's where it happened. And that name eventually was dropped because Dzerzhinsky was a communist. They changed the name to Kamyanske, and that was one of the cities I showed you already. So these people became Christians, all of them because of American missionaries who went in there early, and they were in there right after the Soviet Union ended, and that was December of 1991. They got there before I did. It took me a year and a half to get there. I got in there in summer of 93, and the church was already established in their town and a number of other towns. Well, now to the Russian invasion. And so it started in full-fledged form on February 24th, but we saw it actually a day or two earlier. Nadya was predicting that Putin would do it on 2/22/22. And in other words, the 22nd day of February in the year 22, he has sort of a fixation on dates, and she thought he's going to pick that unique date and start that invasion. Sure enough, there were reports of some missile attacks that very evening from across the border. And then troops were seen moving by night on the night of the 23rd, but by the morning of the 24th, it was full-scale invasion, so they're usually saying it began that day. We don't know when it's going to end, but you have President Zelensky here on the left, and the Jewish president of Ukraine. They never had a Jewish president before. And Jewish people were kind of, in a way, discriminated against over there, just kind of like a lot of them have been in our country as well, and some other places. But they elected this man president because they thought he could do a good job. We think he's doing a fantastic job against President Putin there on the right of Russia. It's the big Russian bear trying to swallow up Ukraine. Putin is on record from years ago saying Ukraine is not actually a country, and it actually belongs to us. Well, guess what? Ukraine is the mother of Russia. Russia is not the mother of Ukraine. The Russian Empire began back in the 10th century when my 30th great-grandfather, Vladimir the Great, founded Kievsky Rus, the Russian Empire. They called it Rus, R-U-S, and it was in the city of Kiev. That's where it began. So Kievsky Rus, and that was the beginning of the Russian Empire. Then after that, populations moved northward, and that eventually became Russia. They spread out over to the east and took over Mongol territories, and that became Russia. Those that stayed behind were known then as the Ukrainians. Ukraine is the mother of Russia. But Russia, especially Putin, thinks it's the other way around. They've been trying to grab these eastern provinces over here, we might call them, on the eastern side of Ukraine for 8 years now, ever since they grabbed Crimea. That was 2014. And they've been causing trouble in those eastern zones over there with those forces mounted on the border like that all that time. And then we started seeing them wrapping around all on the border, and the report kept getting higher and higher how many troops were there. First they said 94,000, then it was 150,000, then it was 200,000, then it was 250,000. All these red spots on the map is where they were. I said I'd come back to the maps later. Here is the river, the big river, running down through Ukraine, kind of like our Mississippi. And we, in our home base over there, are on the eastern side. So we're on the right side of that river as you're looking at it on the map. And yet we're not in the heavily attacked area. So far there's only been just a few missiles fired in the Poltava region because that city is not heavily industrial, nor does it have a military presence, so Russia's not so interested in it right now. But all these red spots on the map there is where all these missiles have struck so far. And there's the hot zones all around the border there. And right now it looks like an invasion of Odessa is imminent. I guess Odessa, Texas was named after Odessa, Ukraine. I never actually looked that up, but I'm assuming that must be so. Anyway, they're trying their hardest in those red areas. And we're like right in the middle on the right-hand side between the top red zone and the bottom red zone. Our city of Poltava is sort of right in the middle, but we're working in other cities around there, including two works over there on the eastern side, in that red area on the eastern side, that Russia is trying to annex and become a part of Russia. Of course, they'd like to annex the whole country. And it's the big Russian Goliath facing the little Ukrainian David. Here, as you see in this picture, Nadya put the caption up on the top, David and Goliath in our time. Russia thought they were going to win, I think, in a week. when they started this invasion. I think they are shocked down to their boots at the Ukrainian resistance that they've been met with so far. But these rocket launchers like this been going on, and all this happening in cities, and this big convoy of tanks, you saw this on the news, it was on coming into Kiev over and over again, and all this decimation of buildings like this. You know, when you live in one of those buildings, and that's what it looks like after a hit on there, you don't have a home anymore. So you can imagine how many people have been displaced, and all of this firing on civilian lodging is it's just residences. That's what Russia has been doing. And so it looks like this. But there's the Ukrainian flag, and the Ukrainians are putting up a fierce resistance. They announced, well, by the way, there never has been freedom to bear arms over there. The general population does not have, like we have in the Constitution, freedom to bear arms. But when this invasion began, the president of the country announced, any man who wants to fire a weapon, come and get one. We'll hand you a rifle. So people have asked me, is Russia going to end up winning this war? And I tell them, well, think of it this way. They reported they had 250,000 troops. Let's suppose it's 300,000. And now, can they win in a battle against 10 million men with guns in their hands? What if we didn't have freedom to bear arms here, and Canada was way bigger than us, 10 times bigger than us, and invaded us, but every redneck out here who suddenly has a rifle in his hands, do you think they would win or we would? I predict Russia cannot win this war. They may destroy Ukraine just by flattening their structures and with a scorched earth policy, but how are they going to hold on to a territory against 10 million men with guns in their hands? I don't think it can be done. I may be wrong, but that's how I see it. Anyway, well, I flipped too fast, but see, this beautiful yard between apartment buildings, this is what it looks like now. And people are escaping with their lives and carrying babies and just getting out there as fast as they can. That's why millions of people have fled to the western end of Ukraine and gotten over the border already into Poland and into Romania and other places. I got to quit hitting that so fast. But looking like this, just over and over again. There is the city of Kharkiv. It keeps being in the news. It's the second biggest city in Ukraine. It's over on the eastern side, very close to the Russian border. That's how it looked the night they first fired rockets on Kharkiv. That was the night sky. And there was Kiev, the night they first fired on Kiev. And buildings on fire, fuel depots on fire, airports blown up, all kinds of things. Lots of people killed, lots of people injured. And so this caption you see on here was written about 2.5 weeks ago. 500 missiles have been fired so far. This authority in Ukraine is saying this is the 21st century and all these missiles have been fired on us. What's going on? It's not supposed to happen in modern age like this. Well, folks, that 500 is now about 1,500, maybe 2,000 by now. And this devastation that's taking place is devastating. So here's some figures. This many people been killed so far. That's as of, I believe it was yesterday. I got that right there. 17,200 have been killed, but a lot more than that have been injured. The result of all this, people are turning to God. And so we had baptism after baptism after baptism as a result of this invasion starting. All of these I'm showing you right now took place after the invasion. Ukraine is doing its best to defend its people and its land, and so even if they have nothing more than a Molotov cocktail, a bottle with gasoline in it and a rag on top, and they light that rag on fire, and guess what? A Molotov cocktail, carefully handled like this and placed just right, can destroy a tank like you see in this picture right here. That's a Russian thing. It went down probably from a Molotov cocktail. Some of them got stuck in Ukrainian mud and couldn't get out again. And Ukrainians quickly got possession of those, you can well imagine. And here are all these men who are now saying, you can have guns. So here they are, running along with their guns and taking their families out. And kids saluting the Ukrainian soldiers as they pass by in their tanks and putting up their strong resistance. And this brother, I showed him earlier, he was one of these we reclaimed from years of getting slack and not really being faithful to the Lord. We reclaimed him when we started our online meetings. He's now been drafted into the army. We're praying for him every day. This younger brother, the one I just showed you, is almost 50 years old, been drafted. This one here is about 22 or 3, and he is in active combat service. Millions are now displaced. You know, when that's your home, and that's what it looks like after your night's sleep, you don't have a home anymore, so off you go. Hopefully you can save your children. At least you try, but lots of children have been killed. And half of Ukraine's children are now displaced. That means homeless. And they're sleeping wherever they can, in basements of buildings or in subway shelters. That's what you're seeing here. And that were originally put well underground to have a dual purpose of being bomb shelters. The Soviet Union built those to protect their people from what they thought would be American bombs. Guess what? It's Russian bombs that they're protecting the people from, not America. We're not their enemy. It's the Russians themselves, their own kinfolk, who are doing this to them. And all this mass of people, there's another subway shop there, just spending nights there and wherever they can. And church buildings open up and schools open up and auditoriums and whatever, but people are just having to sleep on floors or anywhere they can go. Pretty rough on children. And see all this? 109 empty baby buggies to commemorate the 109 children who were killed in the attack on Mariupol, the city you keep hearing in the news about, that's being decimated in the south, right near the Black Sea. And there's the buggies. Nobody inside. That's the memorial. 109 children killed. They're trying to kill civilians. They're not sending these rockets on soldiers, basically. It's civilians. So the question is, what can we do? Well, first of all, pray for Ukraine. And right in the palm of that hand is the shape of what the country Ukraine looks like. By the way, if you cut off half of the Texas Panhandle, just take half the top half of the Texas Panhandle off and consider that to be Oklahoma. What's left is the size of Ukraine. So Texas and Ukraine, almost exactly the same size. And the colors on the flag represent the fertile wheat fields below and the blue sky above. They were been renowned as they were the breadbasket of the Soviet Union. That's why Russia wants them back. Here's Nadya in her blue and yellow flag colors. Sometimes she just wears this every day almost. One day she said, I want to go to Walmart. I said, which one, the little one or the big one? She said, I want to go to the big one. I said, what do you need to get there? She said, I don't need anything. I just want to walk around and let people see my clothing and especially my cap, which says, pray for Ukraine in dual language. Pray for Ukraine. And lots of people have stopped and said things to her. Pray for Ukraine. Please, folks, keep Ukraine in your prayers, and especially Ukrainian Christians and those who can become Christians. Keep them in your prayers. Here's one of our church meetings. And show solidarity, if you can think of some way to do that, maybe by just putting a Ukrainian flag. You never know what the effect of something like that might be. Children are saying, stop the war. Children are pleading. We ate dinner with these two Ukrainian boys right over here in Arlington, pardon me, on Pioneer Parkway in Arlington, a restaurant called Taste of Europe, and they did have a sign out front saying Russian food. The owner is actually from Belarus, Minsk, the capital city of Belarus. He took down the sign on the front of the property saying Russian food and instead put up the Ukrainian flag. He's ashamed of what his country is doing in cooperation with Russia. We ate dinner there, and there's their adoptive parents. Those two boys were orphans. And there's their adoptive parents. We all ate dinner there that evening and had a long talk with the Belarusian owner. This shot was taken right down here on I-20 at Clay Cooley's car dealership right near Cooper over here in Arlington, where he's flying the Ukrainian flag where he used to have the Texas flag flying. Show solidarity if we can. Lots of people in this country are doing it. Even Dallas skyscrapers being lit up in blue and gold these days to show how that we stand with these innocent people. And secondly, we can relieve the needy. Now, this is what a lot of stores are looking like over in Ukraine right now. But you see, they're not completely empty. A lot of food is gone, but they're not completely empty. So our guys are going over there, maybe having to travel to a whole bunch of different places and filling up vehicles with what they can get and put them back into that car and go back and make another trip. And we've got some trucks in some places who are doing the same thing. We're laying up all these provisions and then handing them out and distributing them, giving them to needy Christians and fleeing refugees at the same time. And it just goes on and on and on. And that's what we're able to do simply because, pardon the frog in my throat, it got in there yesterday. He jumped in and I haven't been able to get him back out yet. But anyway, we're able to do this because brothers and sisters in Christ and elders of congregations have sent us checks of money that we then send over there by wire transfer. I'm utilizing Chase Bank for that. And all the banks are still in operation over there. Wire transfers still work. And guess what? Chase Bank has refunded every transfer fee since this invasion began. It's usually a $40 fee to do a transfer. They refunded every one of them. And so we're sending transfers in just about every day, at least every other day as this thing is going on. And a provision of meat like that, if you open your freezer door, you probably see some pieces of meat like that. People in Ukraine rarely see that sight. That would be luxury. Nadya told me when she was growing up, she said, my childhood dream was to have a whole chicken all to myself, or to be able at least to eat any piece off of that chicken that I wanted. That was my childhood dream. And she walks into a place like Walmart and sees these already cooked chickens or Costco or wherever, and she just keeps telling me every time she sees it, oh, that was my childhood dream. And she just can't believe that we have this stuff so freely available that they have had to scratch for over on the other side of the world. Half the population is now scraping for food. 1 in 5 is starving. Those people surrounded in Mariupol, that was a starvation siege warfare going on there, folks. They were huddled down in basements. No food could get in. There was an attempt to get a humanitarian aid convoy in there, and then the Russians stopped that and stole the food and ate it for themselves. And so people have died already of starvation because of this. Our man Volodya here, he's down at the Poltava train station every morning. And you can see some of his provisions there. He's standing there in the square in front of the train station along with our brother Mark here, and the two of them together have been putting up tables and handing out food to people coming in on trains fleeing from dangerous zones to the west. And here they are, handing it all out. He was out there a morning ago when a train pulled up, had a boxcar on a passenger train. And he stopped and looked at that, and he was trying to figure out what's a boxcar doing on him. And it was a half boxcar, didn't have the whole thing, it was an open boxcar. And somebody saw him standing there and walked up and said, do you want to know what that is? He said, yes. He said, those are wounded soldiers lying in there that we're bringing back from the front, still alive, but wounded. And the man said, are you handing out food to people fleeing? He said, yes. And he said, if I had known you had this, I could have got more food down here. And you're welcome to anything I've got, and I can go get more. And so that's what's going on every single day. And so this brother here is doing the same thing. This one here is doing the same thing. This one is doing it. He was from Kharkiv, which you keep hearing about in the news. He's now gone over on the west side of Ukraine, and he's doing this humanitarian relief over there. These two brothers were both working it in their location, handing it out to people like this, visiting the homes of Christians like this. And these women, both of which are Christians and are longtime friends. And then in some cases, actually putting up a kitchen where they're preparing the foods and inviting people to come in and have meals. Folks, we're in the biggest humanitarian crisis since World War II. This hasn't been seen since almost 80 years ago. And so we're doing our best to help with it. We invite you to join with us if you have the means and the willingness to do that. And all we need is a check written out to Church of Christ. It's going to go into our sponsored mission account. That's Lake Houston Church of Christ in Humble, Texas. Great congregation down there in Humble. Been our sponsors for 20 years now. And it's going to go into their account. So Lake Houston Church of Christ, or just Church of Christ, works the same either way, and goes into that mission account. And every penny of what is given goes over there. We don't have any overhead like Red Cross or humanitarian aid organizations. It's the Lord's church. We don't put money into the hands of some organization outside of the church. Here's a disabled person being helped out. Hard for people like that to get around. People are still meeting for Bible studies in spite of all this war going on. And we're helping people out whenever we see them, wherever we see them. Millions have fled, millions more are trying, and they're crowding like this. This is what looked like at one of the Kiev train stations as people were trying to get out of there. You can imagine how many were disappointed. There was no room in the train for that many people. We helped this young man and this young woman, his wife, Sasha and Olya. That would be Alexander and Olga is their actual names. We call them Sasha and Olya. We've been evangelizing these people for some time. They were in a place where we were talking with them, communicating. We communicate every day with people over there, day and night, most of the time. And they were saying, the ground is shaking right here where we live. And Nadya said, you've got to get out of there. You're too close to that. So we'll help you. Go to the west. If you want to go to Lviv, we can put you in the hands of people there. And so they did. They got a train passage to Lviv. And Nadya was talking to them. She said, you need to become Christians. You don't know how long you're going to live. Don't put it off any longer. And they said, okay, we're ready to do it right now. We had two preachers waiting to meet them in Kiev, and along with their son here, 9-year-old, and the two parents were baptized into Christ. There's Sasha being baptized. We use bathtubs a lot over there and make it work. If we have real hefty people, we do a tidal wave across them with one arm and get them completely covered with water. So there's Sasha in his baptism, one of our preachers there, well, along with another preacher helping them out. Then we got them into Poland and passed them into the hands of this couple, our missionaries in the city of Łódź, Poland. And by the way, he's a kind of a Fort Worth guy. He originally from Canada, but he was in Fort Worth before he went back over there. And these people really took care of them. And we finally got them out of Poland yesterday on a plane and into Holland, into the hands of the woman in the forefront here and her husband standing in the back. He's one of two preachers in the city of Eindhoven, Holland. They had 9 people already living in their church building from Ukraine. He said, we're out of room in the church building. We'll take them into our own home. So we've spent the last 3 days working on that safe passage for this family. Folks, Ukrainian children are being killed. Some are surviving. All are crying out, help us, if there's any way you can. So our message to you is support Ukraine, any way you can. There we are in our Ukrainian colors. And that's the end of my message on that this morning. So, as I bring my part of this to an end, we want to turn to the gospel of Christ. Over there, doing mission work over there, we have converted a lot of people. I remember having a Bible study one time, and by the way, the moment I kind of paused on and showed you 3 people together, and the woman who had the little girl, Dasha, who helped get that church started, was instrumental in getting that started in that city. That woman, I was living in her apartment for most of 1994, and she said to me one day, I have a friend who would like to hear the gospel of Christ. I said, invite her over, bring her in, we'll do it. She sat there on the couch. I'm sitting here in a chair, and she's right next to me on the couch, and I gave her a Bible. I had one identical to it, 2 Russian Bibles. And I said, have you ever held a Bible before? And she said, no. And she was kind of holding it like this, very shakily. She was so excited. She had never even seen a Bible before. Can you believe that? Many people have not. I said, open to page such and such. That was the page where John 3:16 was located. I said, look at the page number at the bottom, open to that page. Now find a verse, Mark 16. I want you to read it. She started reading in Russian. She started saying in Russian, and as she got past the first phrase, her voice started to break, and she tears were streaming down her face just from reading John 3:16 for the first time in her life. And that's how captivating the gospel of Christ is to people who have never heard it before. Maybe you've heard it before, but you've never moved on it. If you've been teeter-tottering on whether to become a Christian, why not do it today? We have a baptistry right here. You can be on the highway to heaven before you ever walk out of the door to go eat lunch. If you've already done that, but things are not right between you and God, why not make them right today? And there are great prayer leaders here, I'm sure, who will come to the front, and we will all together take your name before the throne of grace on high. And God will wrap his loving arms of forgiveness around you once again. And Jesus will embrace you as his disciple, saved by his blood. Can we help you in any way? If so, and if you can meet us at the front, please do so right now as we stand and sing this song.